Hey everyone! If you're looking to crank up the fear this weekend, you're in the right place. I've got 5 of the scariest, wildest horror films of 2024 lined up. Films that'll either mess with your head or stop your heart. From gothic vampires to psychological curses and satanic serial killers. Stick around, if you dare. There's horror that entertains, and then there's horror that haunts you. Longlegs belongs to the second category, a film that lingers in your bones like a dark whisper you can't unhear. Directed by Osgood Perkins, the son of Anthony Perkins from Psycho, this film is more than just a thriller. It's a descent into a satanic labyrinth of symbols, manipulation, and trauma. Set in 1990s Oregon, the story follows FBI agent Lee Harker as she investigates a series of family murder-suicides with eerie connections to occult rituals. Each murder follows a cryptic pattern, fathers killing families around their daughters' 9th birthdays, all pointing toward a larger, horrifying plan. Micah Monroe plays Harker with a fragile intensity, while Nicolas Cage delivers one of his most unsettling performances in years, transforming himself into a figure of surreal, cold-blooded menace. Critics have praised the film's oppressive atmosphere, with some calling it the most terrifying movie of 2024. Its use of sound design, cold cinematography, and minimal score heighten the sense of isolation and dread. Beyond the scares, Longlegs delves into the human psyche, exploring themes of inherited evil, mother-daughter trauma, and the thin line between memory and possession. This is horror that asks you to look inward and maybe not like what you see. In a year filled with jump scare fests and generic ghost stories, Longlegs stands apart, an intelligent, atmospheric, and deeply disturbing descent into madness. Watch it if you dare. If you're loving the content, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Dastanica for more exciting journeys, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm always excited to hear from you. Now, let's get back to the show. Heretic isn't just another horror film. It's a cerebral trap, one that lures you in with politeness and religious dialogue, then locks the door before you know you're trapped. Directed by the minds behind A Quiet Place, Scott Beck and Brian Woods, this film transforms a simple premise into a philosophical nightmare. 2 young Mormon missionaries knock on the wrong door, and that door leads straight into hell. Inside, Mr. Reed, played with chilling charm by Hugh Grant, offers not conversion, but deconstruction. He doesn't want to believe in God, he wants to unmake it. The horror doesn't rely on monsters or gore, but on ideas, twisting your mind until you're unsure what's real, what's performance, and what's part of the plan. Critics called it a Dostoevskian chamber of terror, blending themes of religious control, simulated reality, and female autonomy with haunting precision. Grant's performance as a manipulative intellectual makes every line drip with menace. By the time you realize the true horror, the prophet is already dead, the resurrection is fake, and the faith you brought in with you is the first casualty. Heretic is a test of belief wrapped in dread, a horror movie that dares to ask, what if the evil isn't supernatural, but simply ideological? Nosferatu isn't just a remake, it's a resurrection. Robert Eggers breathes new necrotic life into the 1922 vampire myth, fusing it with gothic sorrow, poetic decay, and a dread that doesn't scream, but whispers. Bill Skarsgård transforms into Count Orlok with grotesque elegance, a creature not just of fangs and hunger, but of existential isolation. Lily Rose Depp plays Ellen, whose innocence becomes both weapon and curse. Set in 19th century Germany, the film drips with atmosphere, moonlit corridors, plague-ridden ships, and shadows that seem to think. Critics hail it as a masterclass in slow-burn terror. Eggers doesn't just modernize the myth, he mythologizes the modern. Through expressions of disease, obsession, and doomed romance, he turns horror into opera. More than anything, Nosferatu is about consumption, of blood, of beauty, of soul. And by the final act, it is Ellen's self-destruction that becomes salvation, a terrifying paradox that only true horror dares to present. Smile 2 is a scream through the shattered glass of fame. Where the first film explored inherited trauma, the sequel ventures deeper into the claustrophobic horrors of celebrity and performance. Naomi Scott plays Sky Riley, a pop idol on the brink of a comeback tour, but instead she spirals into a waking nightmare. Smiles surround her, audiences adore her, and yet, behind every grin, something ancient and hungry waits. Director Parker Finn shifts the horror from domestic spaces to glittering stages and backstage corridors, where spotlights hide shadows and mental breakdowns are broadcast live. This isn't just about jump scares. Smile 2 questions our obsession with watching others suffer and what happens when the performance refuses to end. Sky becomes the host, not just of a tour, but of a curse, one that feeds on shame, secrecy, and self-hatred. The demon is no longer just outside, it sings through her. In a final act that blends hallucination, spectacle, and symbolic violence, Smile 2 delivers one of the most brutal endings of recent horror. It's not just about surviving the purse, it's about surviving yourself. The Substance is body horror at its most visceral and its most philosophical. In a culture obsessed with youth, perfection, and curated identity, this film doesn't flinch. It bites. Demi Moore plays Elizabeth Sparkle, a former TV icon discarded for aging. When she's offered a black market drug that lets her become young again, played by Margaret Qualley, it seems like salvation. But the price? Self-cannibalism. Each week, the two versions switch bodies. One lives, one sleeps. But the younger self begins to rebel, hoarding power, delaying the switch, consuming the elder. What begins as empowerment turns into parasitism. Elizabeth is not rejuvenated, she is colonized. Her own ideal self turns predatory, and in the end, grotesquely mutates into something monstrous. Director Coralie Farjat layers grotesque prosthetics, gallons of blood, and surreal imagery to explore aging, vanity, and the violence of beauty standards. Think David Cronenberg with feminist fury. By its brutal finale, The Substance has become an opera of disintegration, where identity, fame, and flesh all rot together. It's not a film for the faint of heart, but it's impossible to ignore.